The Deputy President of the country, Paul Mashatile, says the Basic Education Department should do whatever it takes to attract young people with bright minds to the teaching profession. This is in a bid to address the teacher shortage in the country. This came out during the 14th Policy Dialogue Forum of the International Task Force, which continues in Johannesburg. Let's now take a look at some of the key takeaways from the dialogue. We are now joined by the Chief Director for the National Institute for Curriculum as well as Professional Development, Enoch Rabotapi. And a bit later on, we'll be in conversation as well with Hendrick Makaneta, who is an education activist. But Enoch, let's start off with you. Good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us. How dire is the situation when it comes to teacher shortages in South Africa?
Good morning, Aldrin, and thank you for the opportunity. So basically, the situation in South Africa has got a slightly different perspective to what is reflected in the global report, in the sense that from a numbers perspective, South Africa doesn't really have a problem. So we don't have a problem of recruiting people into the profession. Our key challenge is what they are studying. So we talk about what we call size, shape, and substance, where in terms of size, it's the numbers that we are able to attract into the profession. And then in terms of the shape is whether we are attracting the right people in the right areas. And that is where our problem starts, because our reports are showing that many teachers who join the profession are studying for your FET phase, your secondary school. But we have few teachers who actually join our foundation phase of primary school teaching. And so that is where the issue of the shape comes in, because we do have an oversupply at secondary school level, but we have undersupply at primary school level. And the effect of that challenge is that you start having some of your secondary school educators be required to teach in the primary schools, and that affects the quality because that's not where they have been trained to teach. And then the third area is the issue of the substance. Now the substance, it's about the quality of our teachers, whether they have the right content, whether they have the right knowledge to be able to teach the subject that they teach. And it's another issue that we are grappling with, because in some of the subjects, and this has reflected in the performance of the learners in subjects such as mathematics, such as accounting, and other technology subjects, where the performance is not as we want it to be. And our view is that this is a reflection that the knowledge base or the content base of our teachers in these subjects is inadequate. And so that is how we have categorized the nature of our shortage.
Yep.
We don't have a shortage in terms of numbers, yes.
When it comes to the question around the substance, is it the quality and the understanding of the teachers when it comes to those subject matters? But then also on the other end as well, is that we've been told that the Department of Basic Education has found itself having to recruit teachers from countries such as Zimbabwe because we don't have enough teachers who are able to teach the STEM subjects.
Well, this was a problem previously, but it's a problem that we have been able to address. And that is why if you look at our database of unemployed educators, you do find instances where educators who are qualified in this subject are still struggling to find employment. And as a department, we have given a directive that local teachers need to be prioritized when it comes to the teaching of these subjects. But obviously for those who were already in the system and have been in the system for some time, we have to stay with them in the system, but we have significantly increased production of teachers in these subjects.
Okay, before we go to Hendrick, Enoch, why is it that we have unemployed qualified teachers, including in the STEM subjects, and then we still have overcrowded classrooms?
Okay, so firstly, the issue of unemployed educators is created partly by the issue of the alignment between what the student has qualified in and what is needed in terms of the post that is advertised. So it's the question of the mismatches that are making it difficult for these newly qualified teachers to be absorbed into the existing posts. The second area that causes that is that, of course, there is a requirement on our part to increase our budget spend so that we are able to expand the post basket that is available. And that requires a lot of other requirements. We need to expand the number of classrooms that we have. We need to expand the number or the pool of teachers that we have so that we can then reduce the teacher-learner ratio. Okay. And as you are aware that there are fiscal challenges at the moment, but incrementally as a department, the budgets that are allocated to education have been adjusted upward, but unfortunately the backlogs are huge. So it's a matter that is going to take time to resolve. Okay.
Hendrick also joining us this morning. Hendrick, thank you so much for making time for us. What do you make of the characterization that Enoch has given around the question around the teacher shortages in South Africa?
Well, excuse me. Well, thank you very much indeed, Aldrin. The teacher shortages, of course, he has mentioned that we don't really have of course, in the foundation phase, as well as in the intermediate phase, that is where the issue is. He has already highlighted that secondary, there is an oversupply. And the reason for this is that there seems to be a focus on the higher schools, high schools. If you look at how we celebrate every year the matric pass, everyone, even the teachers or even students who aspirant teachers, people who want to study teaching, they can see that there is a lot of focus at high school. The minister is always seen celebrating, the class of matric. So everybody else wants to go there. And there's also a belief that if you are in high school, you'll earn more money than someone who is at a primary school. So hence, there is that oversupply of teachers in high schools than in primary. But of course, you also, Aldrin, spoke about the ratio. The fact that we still have overcrowded classrooms. Why is it that the teachers are not employed? So this actually talks to the willingness of government. I think that the budget, although the Department of Higher Education gets the biggest chunk in terms of the budget allocation, the reality is that we still need to build more infrastructure. We need more schools. We need hence, we need these teachers who are on the database to be absorbed as well, because it can't be correct that learners, one teacher is able to teach more than 50 learners in the classroom.
Yeah.
So we need to expand the system with a view to looking after the general well-being of all our learners.
Yeah, Hendrick, what about the salaries that teachers are receiving and also the competitiveness in that industry between the public as well as the private sector? Because the MEC for Education in Gauteng has also raised this as a concern, where you find that highly qualified teachers who are brilliant, talented in the public sector being poached by the private sector.
Well, it is true that the private sector is poaching teachers in the public service, and that is in the main, because of also their expansion. Because the private schools are expanding. If you can look at, in the past few years, schools such as Kuro have expanded over the years, as well as other private schools. Hence, they will always be in need of teachers, and the only place where they can find them is, of course, in the public schooling system. And, the one issue that needs to be addressed, of course, is the issue of quality. Quality learning and teaching, which at times is lacking in our public schools because of some of the resources that are not there. I mean, we are moving towards, we are now in the digital times. Yeah. And you still find schools in public schools where, they don't necessarily have the necessary infrastructure that is required. E-learning or e-books, are not there. And I think that that is why the private schools will continue to, to produce quality learners than our own, despite the pass rate. Of course, I know that sometimes we look at the pass rate, the learners who are able to do very well in public schools, but at times, they become disadvantaged, even when they arrive at the university level because of the lack of exposure to some of this, infrastructure that is highly required.
Yeah. Enoch, last year there was a report that was released by the Stellenbosch University looking at the demand and supply of teachers, and it also highlights that 48% of public school teachers retiring in the next 10 years, the number of graduating teachers will need to double. So nearly half of the public school teachers will be going into retirement over the next 10 years. How's the Department of Basic Education going to deal with that particular vacuum, considering that you're already complaining about budget cuts?
So we are aware of that challenge, and I mean the fact that on average in South Africa we produce about 24,000 new teachers every year, and we're not able to absorb all those teachers. So we are confident that at the rate at which we are able to absorb, at the rate at which we are able to produce teachers, then that issue will be mitigated, because those teachers are not going to be leaving all at the same time. But this will be gradual over the period. And looking at the rate at which we produce and the rate at which they leave, at the moment we are comfortable that we will not reach a crisis situation.
Yeah. How are you going to do that when you don't have a budget, when you complain about the budget cuts and the austerity measures?
No, the thing is, remember, when people leave, they leave posts that are already funded. So in terms of replacing existing posts, it is not a problem because it's not an additional cost for government. The only thing that becomes an additional cost is if a new post is created. And of course, we do have an obligation to also expand the provision of our system, which is, for an example, in terms of the new areas that we are creating, the 3 streams model.
Sure.
So that is where we will have challenges in terms of getting those. But replacing existing ones, we don't anticipate a challenge there.
But the challenge that KwaZulu-Natal is facing is that in some cases there has been a moratorium on filling vacancies. So that's the issue that I'm trying to deal with here, is that on one end, sure, you have a supply of teachers, but those teachers can't find jobs. They can't be employed because the department doesn't have a budget. KwaZulu-Natal is saying that we do have the vacancies. However, there's a moratorium on filling some of these vacancies because of the austerity measures.
Yes, absolutely. The issue of austerity measures at the moment is a problem. But I think this issue, depending on the issue of the financial years, so it's a shifting target. Probably we will be going into the new financial year where there will be new allocations, and these allocations will be used, of course, to address some of the challenges we all in government experienced this issue towards the end of the current financial year, where there was a moratorium put on the appointment or on the filling of new posts. So it is a problem that is there. But it is a problem that shifts, because as new budgets are allocated, we are able to address some of the backlogs. But it is true that the issue of financial challenges is a problem currently in government.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Enoch Rabotapi, who is the Chief Director for the National Institute of Curriculum and Professional Development at the Department of Basic Education, as well as Hendrick Makaneta, who is an education activist.